The program you are about to see is called the Anishinaabe View, in their own words. This is a series of shows produced by the Algoma District School Board for a website being developed called Voices from the Gathering Place. This is about the earliest history of Sault Ste. Marie between 1622 and 1870. What we discovered in developing this website was that while the significant events in this period all included First Nations and Métis people from the area, and while their stories were being represented, their voice was not. And it was important to include their voice and their stories. And even more remarkable and interesting was that the stories from the oral tradition were often ones that were not in the written record. And so we're so happy to present this series of shows filmed at Eastview Public School with Anishinaabe students from grades 4 to 8 with elders, chiefs, and knowledge keepers, and hearing the Anishinaabe view in their own words.
Tell us some of your stories.
Language.
What was your childhood like as an Anishinaabe-Laguage?
What my childhood was like as a little girl, she asked me. I'd say it was wonderful. My grandparents raised me. I didn't know they were my grandparents and until I was 14. And then I found out that my grandparents, my parents were my grandparents. But I had a real good upbringing. We had, we used to go, we didn't have any electricity in our house. We didn't have running water, but we had a real good childhood. My dad was a fisherman and a hunter, and he taught us everything there is to know about hunting and fishing. And also my mother, we went with her when we went strawberry picking and raspberry picking and blueberry picking and all that, so we knew how to make preserves. So it was pretty good, and we had our laughter and play times, and we went fishing. We used to take the boat out. We lived near a bay in South Bay, so it was pretty good. Awesome. Miigwech.
Ani Nicole Dijnikaz, what were some teachings you were taught as a girl?
Okay, so what are the teachings? We weren't taught. We lived a life. We lived a life of kindness and sharing and being non-judgmental. So when we lived that, like our parents used to take in people who were having a hard time, and they would give them the best bed in the house to sleep in. We would feed them. We'd pack them a lunch when they left. So that's showing kindness and sharing, and not to judge people. When there was something happening at our end of the reserve, like something bad happened, maybe somebody did something bad to another person, we were not to judge that person. So we had all that, being kind to each other and love. There was all that in our family. So we acquired all those things. Like you might hear of the 7 grandfather teachings. We lived those teachings in our life. Miigwech.
Ani Darren Dijnikaz, Wakamakong Donshnaba Makwa Dodam. When did you start speaking English?
Oh. When I started to speak, when I was 2.5 maybe, I only spoke my Nishnaabe language. And when I say Nishnaabe, I'm referring to, like, where I grew up, there was a mixture of Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi. So it was a mixture of all those three tribes understand each other. So, but since the people settled, those three tribes settled on Manitoulin Island. So it was a mixture. There's very little difference between those languages. So when I began to speak, I only spoke Nishnaabe. And growing up, I think when I was 5, that's when I began, and I think there's a question coming up that'll hit that answer. But maybe I became fluent in English 5, 6, 7, by the time I was 8 years old. I was fluent in English then. I could read and write in English. Miigwech.
Anishinaabe. Can you tell us about your children and can they speak Anishinaabe?
I have 5 children. My oldest is Colleen, and my oldest son is Chris. I have a set of twins, and my baby's name is Tommy John. He's not a baby. To me, he's a baby. But he's not a baby anymore, so I have 5 children. And unfortunately, they don't speak the language because I didn't speak the language to them when they were small. All I did was speak the verb commands like we snin, basigwin, wape tot, like all those commands like hurry up, eat your food, the bus is coming, where's your jacket, put on your hat, like those types of things. That's the only language I spoke to my kids when they were growing up. My husband didn't speak English. Didn't speak Nishnaabe when he only spoke English. So it was kind of hard. And a few years back, I was taking bilingualism course online. You know what online is? You take a course on the computer. So I know a little bit about a computer. So I took an online course on bilingualism. And in there was a chapter on how people acquire a second language, a third language, a fourth language. They can acquire more than one language at the same time, but there has to be, those languages has to be all over the place. Like in Latvia, when my brother-in-law was out there, he said people out there know like 4 languages. They're fluent in 4 languages. But that's because those 4 languages are all over the place. So when I learned that, I could have kicked myself in the you-know-where, you know, and if I knew that when my kids were growing up, I would have stayed in the language all the time and my kids would have been bilingual. But it's too late now, like, you know, so I do whatever I can. Miigwech.
Anin Jason Dejnikaz, did you go to residential school?
Yes, I did. Is that all you want to know? When I was 5, my older sister was 6.5, and my younger sister was 4. I think that's around that age that our parents took us to Spanish Ontario and to the girls' residential school there. And my dad must have had it in the back of his mind that we needed to learn English, read it and speak it and write it so that we would be successful off the reserve. Like he knew that we wouldn't be staying on the reserve all the time. So in order to be a nurse or a teacher or a doctor or a lawyer, you need to have those skills, those English skills. You have to know how to read it and write it really good to be successful in any career. So in the back of his mind, he must have thought they have to learn English. And the only place there was the residential school to send us. We didn't stay there for 4 years straight. We went home at Christmas time and we went home in the summertime. So we didn't lose connection with our families at home, our families in our community. Miigwech.
Ani Gavin Dishnakaz, what is your favorite Nanabush legend?
My favorite Nanabush legend? They're all my favorites. I read a lot. Some of the stories were told by my dad and his friends who were old to me when I was young, you know, and they would sit around and tell stories. So some of them came from them, others I read. So there's lots of teachings in there. When you hear those stories, it teaches you about sharing, about being kind, about not being stingy, those sort of things. Eh? So I can't really think of one particular one of the Nanabush stories. Maybe one that comes to my mind is the story about how the woodpecker came to be. If you've seen that one on the website, how the woodpecker came to be. So that it's a good story. It's a good story about you have to be kind to each other. You have to share what you have. And in that story, that lady who turned into a woodpecker wasn't kind or anything. So Nanabush kind of did something to that lady. So you go on barbaranolan.com and look for that little story and it'll tell you. Miigwech.
Ani Darren Nishnakaz, Kitagansi B. Nidonjaba, Megazeta Nodam. How long have you been teaching the language?
Well, quite a few years. I started in 1973 when I was working at St. Hubert's School. Some of your parents might have attended that school, or maybe even your grandparents. I saw that the students did not want to learn the French language, and they wanted to learn their own language, which wasn't offered at that time. And I would walk around much like outside on yard duty. That's where we heard lots from the kids, you know, and they would share things, and they didn't like French. La, la, la. Miss, I heard you speaking the language. You know, you should teach us. So I developed the first curriculum in any of the school boards in Native as Second Language. So since 1973, I've been involved in language. Oh, if you go 2016, I don't know how many years ago, I think it's more years than I am of age. Okay?
Ani Harley Nadijnakas, Kitaganzi B. Ndonjaba, Migize Dodem. Were you involved with Robert Munsch when he had his books translated into Ojibwe?
I was, as a matter of fact. I helped the ones who translated them, proofreading and stuff like that. But here's an interesting story. I was working at Sioux College at that time, and he came there, and in the gym, and there was busloads of kids were brought in, and so they said, Barbara, how about if you translate at the same time as Robert Munsch tells his story? And I thought, oh, can I do that? You know? Like I have to translate the same time as he's reading it into my language. I said, okay, I'll take the challenge because I'm a person that does that, you know? I get challenged, so I take the challenge if I think I'm going to do it. Don't ever think you can't do it. If I could do things like that, you can too. So what I did was, okay, Robert Munsch was up there and he's reading his book. Now he's going, let's see now. He would read, Andrew's mother opened up his mouth and looked inside. So I would say, on the leg, gee, whatever, eh? So I would do that. And then Robert would say, oh, she said, it's a loose tooth. And I know what to do. And Barbara would go, oh, nukshkal mandawi bit, gikandan wajichiga. So we went like that, back and forth, Robert Munsch and I. I don't know if anybody ever videotaped it, but if it is, maybe we could look it up and see how I did. Hey? So that's my experience with Robert Munsch.
Anin Kira Nadishnakas, what is your greatest accomplishment as a teacher of Anishinaabe?
Oh, my greatest accomplishment as a teacher of Nishnaabe-Laguage. Well, I think my greatest accomplishment is creating a speaker. What do you call that? Giving my language to another person by speaking to them all the time, up to a point where they understand, and then they start responding to me. So I think I created one speaker. And it's an adult person. It's not a child, you know. So I think that is my greatest accomplishment so far. I have many things I want to do. I'm at the daycare now, and the kids at the daycare in Garden River, like I say, "Ni men read," and then Reed just dances. Like, I don't have to tell them, like I don't translate that to English. I say, "Ni men," that means you dance. Okay, I don't say that. So it's kind of an immersion type of thing that I do there. So that's what I did with this fellow. And in his thank you, he put up the website. So that's his thanks. So everybody could see the stories that I have on there.
Anin kai nadishnakas ketakan zibi nadonjaba mayangan nadodem. What is the easiest way to explain animacy?
Animacy? I don't remember reading that question. No, just kidding. Animacy, the best way to explain it is animacy in our language. Okay, in our language there's animacy and inanimacy. Okay, so there are words that are alive, like of things that are alive, like nouns basically. Nouns that are alive and nouns that are not alive. Okay, so like pabwin would be not alive because, you know, it's made, like it does something for you. But a clock is alive. You want to know why? Why? It moves on its own and it tells you something, eh? It tells you what time it is. It doesn't verbally tell you, but the hands, eh? So it's transferring something to you. So that's animacy. Even a car. Okay, car in our language is daban, and it's animate. It's an animate noun. And a car has a battery. Makes it move, it takes you from here to there. Okay, so that's animacy. Anything alive or does something for you, that it's alive and it does something for you. So that's what that is. Some of our plants are animate, some are inanimate. It's very hard. You have to acquire the language before you just acquire it. You don't know anything about animacy and inanimacy. When you're acquiring language, you just get it. You know, not until you start studying the language. And that's what I found when I was working on the language back in 1973. I found out that there's a lot of spirituality in our language. There's a lot of those types of teachings in our language. And if we had another day to be here, I would show you some of those. So maybe next year, I will come back and I'll show you some of those words where like one word will grow into a big word, and it's got a lot of teachings in it. So our our language is a spiritual language, it's a common sense language, and it's just beautiful.
Anin Kendall Dishnakaz Kitaganzi B Donjaba Megazed Dodem. Can you tell us about your Ojibwe app?
Oh, did you know I had an app? Yes, actually, I have it right here. I just happen to have this thing. People are always wanting to find out or to hear the language, okay? And they don't have that, they don't have anybody around, okay? So I wanted to give people an opportunity to hear the language, even though if it's just words. Okay, I can't be all over the place, you know, talking to people in the language. So I thought, geez, what an opportunity to do this. So I had a chance to go and learn how to do this on the computer. Of course, there was a computer programmer there to help me, well, to teach me how to do it. So I went to a place called Las Vegas for 5 days for the training. So all day, I didn't go sightseeing or nothing. I worked from 8 o'clock in the morning till 5 o'clock at night, racking my poor little brains, you know, and I don't understand all detail. You drag that over there. You drag that there. You got to develop a page. You got to do all these little buttons, eh? And all that. So I did that in about 4 years ago, maybe 4 or 5 years ago. I developed one for the Apple products. Then I thought, not everybody has an iPhone. What about the ones that have Samsung or any other kind of phone? So I thought, okay, so an opportunity came up again to go and do another training. So I thought, well, I already know a little bit, I'll go again. So I fundraised for myself. The first time I went to, for the Apple product was sponsored by the Nishnaabe Indian band in Baraga, Michigan. This time, the second time, to do the Android product, I fundraised for myself. I sent letters everywhere, you know, donation requested. I had taco sale, I had this and that. So I managed to raise enough money to take myself to Albuquerque. I mean, this guy, the trainer, he finds these interesting places to offer these courses or to help people develop their language apps. So I did one for the Android products. So it's here, and you can listen and hear it, and which I'm sure you have done. You all have listened to it? How many of you have an iPhone or an Android phone? Do you have it on your phone? Well, shame on you. It's free. You got to download it. It's free. So anytime you're walking on the street, okay, I think I'm going to listen to some actions. Okay, you press it. Well, when it works, you press it, okay? So that's how I came to do this. Because we're in the age of technology, okay? Everybody has some kind of a phone. So I thought, well, and I'll make it available for free. I don't earn any money from these things. You know, it's available for free. Like, I don't want anybody to go in high in debt just to get yeah, you know. Anyway, so that's the story of the language apps. Miigwech.
Sophie Dishnakaz Kitaganzi B Donjba Jajak Dodem. How did you get the idea for your website, barbaranolan.com?
Well, I think I kind of answered that question over here earlier. It wasn't really my idea. It was this fellow by the name of John Paul Montano, and that's the one, remember I said I created a speaker? Well, that's the one. And he said, Barbara, I can now understand you fully, and I'm beginning to speak it. So to return that, my thanks to you will be, I will make you a website. Oh, okay. Well, what will we call it? And because everybody knows me as Barbara Nolan, we may as well call it barbaranolan.com. Okay? So because if I named it other than barbaranolan.com, they would say, well, what the hell is that? You know? You know, so you might want to edit that part out. But anyway, that was his, and that's his thanks for me speaking in the language to him all the time, that he is speaking the language today. Yeah. And it was his idea, because he said there's lots of people that can't come to school. At that time I was working in Bay Mills, Michigan, in their immersion program, and but not everybody can go there, you know. So he said, what a better way to do it is on the internet. And like I said, we are in the technological age. Okay, in the age of technology, you can do anything, you know, on computer, but through the internet, eh? And then he also, along with the website, he's got only us can go in and see where our hits come from. So I have people watching the videos from Vancouver, Edmonton, South Africa, Indonesia. You know, you go on the internet and you type in whatever, and if you're looking for something, you know, you find it, and then they'll even make a comment on it sometimes. Yeah, so that's where that came from.
Ani, Merrick Dishnakaz.
Bonjour, Merrick.
Barb, my question is, there's a lot of English around nowadays, and so what do you think is the best way to keep the Anishinaabe language alive?
Well, yes, I think I hit up on that, because in order for a person to acquire the language, they must immerse themselves in the language. We have a couple of people from Garden River that have lived in Montreal and have become fluent in French. But in Montreal, there's French all over, eh? They hear it every day, radio station, TV, it's French all over the place. So one of them is my nephew, and so he's understanding it a bit now because he's immersed in that language. Here, unfortunately, we don't have the amount of speakers that we wish we would have, we could have had, to achieve that. But it can be achieved. Look at, I create a speaker over a course of 12 to 14 years on a part-time basis. Okay, I spend a lot of time with him, you know, and so you have to spend a lot of time. And oh yes, and I have another person that found me on Twitter, and then he followed me or he befriended me on Facebook, and he's self-taught. 7 years. He spent all his time on language. Whatever he can get on the internet, YouTube, wherever he can find a language. And him and I converse on the Facebook. You can send a message, and there's a little microphone there, and you press that, and we talk to each other in the language, you know. So it can be done, even though there's English all around, but it takes time, it takes commitment. You have to have a passion that you want to be able, you want to one day become a speaker. So if you've got that passion, by all means, go for it, you know, before it dies and disintegrates, and it will just be, they'll say, oh yeah, there used to be this language one time. We don't want that to happen. Miigwech? Uh-huh.
are your thoughts on French being Canada's second official language?
What are my thoughts? French? Well, Quebec, hey? They were fighting for their, this province, they wanted to become a little country at one point of their own, you know? And I can see that because there was lots of French people. You know, the language is very much alive. And all the more power to them. I can't say, oh, that's bad, you know. It's good. And I think Nishnaabe, the Nishnaabe Nation, like all the First Nations in Canada, wanted the government to recognize their language. But there's so many, there's 52 different native languages in Canada. And for the government to say, okay, we declare 52 native languages in Canada to be the second official language, it's kind of not good because of those 52 languages, there's some of them are dying. Some of them are gone even. And there was a study done before that to determine how many of our Aboriginal languages in Canada are going to survive. And they came up with, guess how many languages will survive if something is done about them. How many? 3. Basic Nishnaabe. 3 languages will survive if something is done about them. If they don't do anything about them, those languages will also die. And that's Cree, Algonquin, which we are a part of the Algonquin family, and Inuktitut. Those 3 languages. Those are destined to survive, providing we do something about it. So I'm really happy that Eastview has got such a vibrant classroom here, and its language is alive here, and we got to continue with that. Anybody else? Oh, okay.
Do you think our language is in danger?
If we don't do anything about it, it's in danger. So we have to do, even learning phrases, we can do anything as long as we do something, you know. Otherwise, if we don't do anything about it, sure, it's going to die. It's like your plants at home. If you don't water those plants, they're going to die, okay? So think of it as our language is water. I have to water myself every day with language in order to keep it alive, okay? Don't overwater it, though. Otherwise, you'll kill it too. No, I'm just kidding. But, you know, your plants at home have little holes there. Eh? If you put too much water, the water will seep through anyway. So there's no such thing as giving yourself too much language. The more language you get, the better it is for you. So we have to keep that in mind. Miigwech.
What are your feelings about a full immersion school in Garden River?
Well, the idea is great. But there's lots of roadblocks. One of them being, where will we get qualified, fluent teachers? Okay? Like the ministry says you have to have a degree to be a teacher. Okay? And so if we're going to open up an immersion school, we need all these teachers that are fluent in the language. You know, so maybe all of you from Garden River, you have that determination that you want to become a speaker, and then I'll be a teacher in the Garden River Immersion School. You know, if you had that ambition and that drive to save the language, you could do it. Like, you're still young, you're not too old to grasp the language. And that's a dream that I have. And I know it's been tried before, but it would be awesome to have an immersion school in Garden River. So if you all became fluent and you all became teachers, our dream would come true, eh? What a wonderful world it would be. Miigwech.
What are some examples of different dialects in Anishinaabe?
Examples? Okay, some of the dialects, okay, like I mentioned, there's 3 Nishnaabe languages, eh? There's Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi. They're basically all the same, but different, okay? And that's a concept that you have to understand. It's the same, but it's different. You know, it's a difficult concept to understand. But even in one dialect, like I remember back home, in South Bay, okay, so picture this as Wikwemekong. So we lived over that way. And then there's Rabbit Island way across. Even there, even though like they're 10, 15 miles apart, that language might be a little bit different. And when I say language, it'd be the same. Okay, let me back up a minute. English. Okay, English, we all understand and speak English, eh? And do you ever hear somebody from Australia speaking English? No? Yes, some of you? Well, they sound different, but they are speaking English, okay? Somebody from England, like Queen Elizabeth, okay, when she speaks English, she sounds different. And then there's, if you go, okay, so that's one thing. They may sound different, okay, but they're not different. I can understand somebody from Australia. I can understand somebody from England when they're speaking English. Sometimes I have to tune up my ears though. Okay, so it's the same thing with our language, our Nishnaabe language. Ojibwe sounds a little bit different. The rhythm of the language changes from location to location. Okay, so somebody from Eastern Canada or Eastern Ontario, like Peterborough area, they kind of sing when they're speaking the language. I can understand them perfectly. And then some are kind of, they just float along like a kind of in a monotone. And then another language might, they pronounce every little syllable. They don't drop the vowels like bean diged, I say bean diged for come in, okay? So another, the Ojibwe person might say bean diged, okay? So every little, we're known as the vowel droppers, as people from Manitoulin Island. So some people, they speak, that's the way they speak. So that's the dialect difference. Some words might be different, like we say pubwin for chair, and another dialect might say desiboin. It's the same thing, but it's a different word altogether. Okay, so we have to be mindful. Like when I started teaching, I had to consult with Garden River. Like my mother-in-law was a fluent speaker, and there was quite a few elders back in those days that could speak the language. So I would ask her, okay, is this the right way to say this word? And they say, yeah. Or maybe you could say it this way, like come here. Mampi bijad. Okay, their way would have been ma bijad. So I tried to not say the way I usually said it. Okay, so I tried to do it that way. Mm-hmm. Oh, I had an opportunity when I taught in Kansas in the United States, to listen to a fluent Potawatomi lady. She was 89 years old, was a spry lady, still driving a car, you know, and she was fluent in her language. So I started speaking to her, and I'm I'm of the three fires, Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi. Our language is mixed. Okay, so I started speaking to her, and she responded to me, and we could get along like that, except sometimes there was some phrases that I just didn't understand, and I would tell her, could you repeat that again? You know, but others was exactly the same. Exactly the same. There was no difference. So that's about the dialects. Okay, I'm going to go back a little bit to one of the questions about residential school. Okay, you hear a lot about, I don't know if you hear a lot about the residential school, but I forgot to tell you. At residential school, their mission was to do away with our language and to give us English language. And they did it in a severe type of way. Okay, when we went there, we didn't know English, and we were just amazed at this nice parlor. We went in, our parents brought us in with our little suitcases, and it was just like the floors were like marble, and we were just in awe. Like, we were 5 and 6 years old, remember? How many of you have 5 and 6 year old sisters and brothers? Yes, they're small. So when we were brought into the residential school there in Spanish, we were in awe about this place. We'd never seen floors like that, and furniture was just shiny. And then we turn around and our parents are gone. And right away we started to cry. And right away we got hit because we're not supposed to cry. And right away we started speaking our language, like, where's my mommy, where's my daddy, in our language, because we didn't know English, remember? And right away we get the strap. So their mission was to do away with our language, the way we are, to do away with us as Nishnaabe people. They wanted to create an English person, an English-speaking person. So they cut our hair, like we had nice long hair, they would cut it. I had little bangs here. I got a picture of me when I was small. And they took our clothes and gave us the clothes to wear. We got the strapping. It was a big strap like that. Wham, you know. And I think I was bound and determined, I'm going to keep my language. I spoke it all the time. I don't remember how many times I got the strapping. After a while, my hand would automatically go like that. You know, as soon as I know I spoke the language, I would go like that, waiting for the strap, which I usually got. It was either that or pulling your ear, you know. It wasn't good. So there's ways to acquire a language. There's the additive bilingualism. You add a language in a good way. You have to embrace the person that wants to acquire a second language. You have to embrace their first language, which wasn't done there in residential school. Theirs was to do away with our language. So they did everything they could for you. So a lot of the kids didn't speak their language. And to this day, they won't. Some of those who are lucky to be alive still will not speak the language. Those who knew the language when they went there. So I just wanted to share, I missed that part. There's somebody who inquired about the residential school. So I hope when we have our immersion school in Garden River, we will embrace the English language of the kids. We're not going to do away with the English language, but we're going to add a second language to them. And it can be done. French immersion schools are doing it. Why can't we? So that's all I have. to say about that? There was a request that you wanted to hear a specific story. It's on the website, but I think you wanted to hear it again. Okay, so I will attempt to do it. I'll put Robert Munsch away for now. I'm sorry, Robert. Okay, we'll put that Robert Munsch over there. And I'm going to put pictures up, and I'm going to refer to these pictures when I'm telling the story. Okay, and it's going to be in the language, because I know you love to hear. Okay, you love to hear the language. And what I do is I make people understand me simply by my gestures, my body language, my drawing. I'm not a good drawer either. I'm not an artist by all means, but I will draw and I will point, and you will get the message. Okay? And because you have already heard this story on the website, but you want to hear it again. Okay. Mampi ni danache mampi. Ni mandagi awan jigbik bish manda. Manda das jigbik awan Tigok odagi zakiok. Tigok. No one says now zijik tigok. Mampiders sinin gitenon. Nandan sinin. De beskogna nandan neangit sinin. Ni benagi batin don mampi sinin. Na das niet bachma. Oh, miigwech. Mapa migize. Mi ma water bachmak. Aha. Aha. Mapa tash migize I bambezaka. Nengaj. Jush bebengote. Mapa tash migize gai mapa gi wapsi. Gi bingwe. Gai maba shkish god. Maba migse. Gai maba gi wapsi. Aego gi wamdazid. Anishkwani od. Nadwan dong maba migse. Gip takshin. Mage mampi patsk. Gip takshin. Mage od bambezet. Tak de beshin. Ah. Mi maba gashe bezit migse ashna gi bambezaka. Narun aptishigo gi nishin non nandan togat. Gi nishin non nandan togat. Mi noa gi nishin ne. Pij manjiget. Mi shkode bambezet. Narun dong gi bij maman. Gi goin. Gi goin gi beach maman. Oh, de bambezet. Mompi being gi ato gi goin. Minwa nandan gi na kaznan we debbenat nandan gi goin. Minen ga na kazat zidat. Oh, de bambezet. Oh. Mi de bambezet mi debbenat nandan gi goin. Godeng dash ok chni bena. Ni bena gi goin gi debbenan maba. Op chugna ni bena. Ni bena gi goin gi debbenan. Mampi koshman nen jigbik. Kuminale pizet, debbenat iguin, miude pagnat. Nibna. Man piders maba, madbe. Waisne. Atam nanjage. Yatish amagi baya, wen bojo. Wen bojo, gibaya oma. Wen bojo, apjip kade. Miude bamset. Miude nabit. Wa! Atni bnagi oin wab man. Ma wen bojo. Ma bata shotin madbe. Ma ba megase. Madbe ote. Madbe. Waisne. Mi ma ba wen bojo digi betushing. Hey! Krasa. Megase. Ma ba tash megase. Kai wapsi. Wanneer keda. Abi jij? Mi dus mee gezegd dat. Oh, mampi. Mi gezegd mi no de nabe. Kai no apsi. Kai kwam mis no. Keda maba mi gezegd. Mi sma woon beschmut gishat. Oh, keda. Ap jugon dawissen. Ap jugon bakde. Tuguge ni anen gihu. Mage bejek, mage nish, gihu ik da gishab. Ap jugon da moi. Gihu. Keda maba megese. Oh, keda shmaba megese. Wat bishwe. Oh, aha. Da pen. A wat tugu bejek, nish, swe, ni wen wisnen. Keda maba megese. Mi samaba wen bojon gi wisnet. Ogi tapnan gi wen. Nets nam na pose gi gon. Mi des mi no amaba wen bojon enendang. Sto. Gino man nen migesot. Megese. Ki gibingwe. Kaige go skinsh go ngdazidan. Oh, kedamaba megese. Gai nopsi. Nargun dong op chugundo bugo sendam chiwapi amba. Kedamaba megese. Mida shwen boshon ektat. Na hao kedasa. Zam kimne joebes. Zam kisham. Gigon wimok kedasa. Mabam win boshon. Non chge gogen gaston mi chge keda. Maba win boshon. Aha. Mi de shmand gi chge. Duskaben den annen. Mi gesod duskaben. Mi samegse gi duskaben. Что ги вам дан кинагего. Oh, wow, be. Oh, kchimigwech, ten annanden, oh, kchimigwech. Kikskito in we wabia. Mi dus ma dat wen boshon. Aha, mi gwech geni kishamien. Keta maba. Mi gen goding gasrep keba. Mampi. Aha. Nishin, magirai. Nishin. So in this story then, it's about sharing no matter what. Okay? So the eagle was blind. You can see that, or the way I explained it, you could see that he was blind. Anyway, so we share. And ever hear of that saying, what goes round comes round? Okay? We do good to others, that good will come back to us. And that's how we grew up back home. Remember I mentioned we grew up in kindness and sharing and that? Okay, so when you do good to others, no matter what, however, which way you do good to people, that will come around at one point or another in your life. So in return, and when Vaugeon was a trickster and a magician at the same time, he would trick people, but he was very kind. And he saw that Eagle was blind, and he saw the kindness shown to him, through him allowing him to eat as many fish as he wanted, not just one or two. And so in return, when Vaugeon gave him the gift of sight. Yeah, so in return, we get back twice as much if we give out. Mi we. Na how? Mama mi no agwaminem. Na how? Miigwech. Na how? Miigwech. Na how? Mama mi no. Miigwech.